Hello and welcome to the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I'm your host, Nick McGowan, and on this show, my guest and I unpack the stories that shape us and the lives that we lead on our path to self-mastery. Today on the show, we have Pat Maguire. Pat's a creative at heart whose artistic passions led him towards sales, but it was ultimately his stature that really set him up for success. He's been in sales both selling for and to Fortune 500 companies, and now he's starting to branch out and share more of his wisdom in new ways. Now, this is a pretty real conversation, but we laugh a bunch and we get into some real topics that I'm sure hit really close to home for you as well. So let's not wait any longer. Let the games begin. Pat, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Living the dream, man. How are you?
I am fantastic. Dude, I'm so glad that you're here. We go back a long ways, but have missed some time, so I'm glad that you're on the show. I know when we reconnected again and we were talking through stuff, it just seemed like it would make sense to hop on to do an episode of the podcast because you've grown a lot. You've done a lot of things, and you're actively doing a lot more. So, man, I'm just glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. Well, let's kick things off with, why don't you tell us something that you do for a living and one thing that most people don't know about you?
All right. So I actually had to think about this, and I went to like my main source for content.
Your wife?
My wife. I was like, oh man, what don't people know about me? Because, I use social media just like everybody else. And you're putting all your content out there, your life story, or you're gearing it towards that. And I was like, all right, so what I do, multiple things. 9 to 5, I'm working on transitioning out of that, we'll say. Right now, it's just a weekend thing. I do coaching. What people don't know about me is that I'm actually an artist. That was like the number one thing that came up, because everything I post is fitness or business. So it took some time. It takes some time.
So obviously there are different variations to artistry. It's easy for you and I to say, like, we were art kids growing up. I've even joked with different people. Like, I remember being in high school and being like, I don't want to fucking be in this class. I got a project in the art room. And they're like, fuck off. Get out of here. You're Cresta's problem now. I'm like, all right, I go down and deal with that. So what's the artistry of choice?
Pretty much anything. I always wanted, and I swear it started like back in school. So like 4th grade, it was always like me and several people who were like, oh, you're the best artist ever. And it was like, depends on well, so when he started school, I was like, this kid sucks because he's better than me. So I literally was like, but I remember getting in arguments in like art class, and they're saying, okay, you have to draw this. And I was like, but isn't art an expression of like your feelings? And that's where it literally started. That's where like it just went downhill from there. So it was like, so I've done like, oh my God, airbrush, pencil, charcoal, oil paint. Like I'm always trying to, the one thing I always taught myself was when I do actually do art, I use a pen. So I have to learn to work with my mistakes. So if you mess up and you have a pencil, you erase it, right? If you use a pen, you're like, oh, see? Come on, man.
It's because of those mistakes. I think of the notes that I take and even the journaling that I do. There are times where I'll just riff through things and go, that wasn't what I wanted. And I want to be able to go back and fix those things. So I consciously choose mechanical pencils. And I've got, I don't know, fucking 400 of these things around the house. Like I just pick them up and start writing things and erase. And my handwriting's atrocious anyway. But that's interesting that you actually grab the pens.
So it started making me think differently. At the same time, though, it started making me approach issues in art. So like, right, you're drawing and say you want to draw an eye. So you do the outline, right, of the eye, and you're like, okay, there's the, all right, circle, circle. If you mess up and you have pen, you're like, and it makes you like think harder instead of just being like, oh, okay, cool, let me just start over. You're like, well, shit,
sure.
Where do I go from here? So it started probably in high school with all my doodles all over that no one liked. And just kept going from there. So I don't even think I own a pencil at this point. So if it's written, wow. I'm always like, oh, shit. We all have quirks.
That's interesting. It's funny how some of that stuff is so subconscious. Well, it's not just quirks, it's subconscious things. You know, there's something that you made a choice and then you continue to do it. It's even as stupid as how you tie your shoes. You know, you were taught one way and you did something one way, etc. And then sometimes you'll just opt for slippers or sandals or whatever, just for convenience of use. But being able to take the pens or pencils and understand what the tool is supposed to be used for and you use it, to me, that sounds like it's a lot of accountability, which is a big thing, you know, for you to go, all right, well, this is now in ink. So I guess their eye's going to look a little different than normal, but how do I go about doing that? Now, I would assume that translates into business as well, and probably the rest of your life, where you look at those things and say, like, how do I do this, and then kind of build on it. So you want to unpack that a little bit for us?
So then you brought up something really interesting too, is like accountability. So I think people always look to others for accountability. Like you join a challenge, you join whatever, and it's like, okay, find your accountability partner. And you're like, okay. Then you have to go find someone. And I'm like, I've always worked on being like, I can rely on myself. So it starts with a pen and then it branches out and it's like, okay, if it's written, then I know I have to do it. So as soon as it's like it's writing it into reality. It's like affirmations, right? So you start and you do affirmations. You're like, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to be a millionaire. And it's like you learn how powerful your mind is. Here's something else people don't know. I'm actually pretty smart, but so
throw that in there.
Just tap that one. But you start learning, it starts becoming second nature. So you start all your actions change, like your whole attitude changes. If you keep saying that you can't do something, you'll never do it. But if you start approaching it just by talking about it, you're holding yourself accountable. And it's a whole different thing. You're not going to rely on anyone else to do it for you because you start learning how small your circle is or how large your circle is. And I think as we grow up, we learn where our true circle is. You know, like you're like, oh, I thought you would have been on my side, but you're not here now. So it's like at the end of the day, you look in the mirror, you see yourself, you're like, oh no, it's on me. So kind of interesting, but like the whole pen thing, man, I've always had like an entrepreneur mind, and I say that loosely because I have a book of businesses that I wanted to start. So I wrote them down. I started put the idea on paper, but at the same time, I would talk myself out of it. Well, it's not going to work for this. Or I can't do it because of this, you know. And I think we struggle. Everyone struggles with that. Like, oh, there's, you know, it's easier to find an excuse and a reason why. So it's like you start it and you're like, okay, well, I wanted to do a food truck one time. And I was like, why would I start a food truck? Like, I only cook for people I like. I'm gonna cook for a bunch of strangers. I'm not doing that shit. Wanted to start a landscape business. I was like, dude, I am Irish. I burn
instantly.
Yeah, the moon's out. I'm like, oh, sunscreen. Yeah, raise your hand if that happens. So I literally I have a book, and at one point it became like a running joke with me and Alicia, my wife. And I was like, there's 32 businesses in there right now. Eventually, I'm gonna find one and be like, oh shit, that's the one. But if you don't write it down, it's like out of sight, out of mind. So just something I still do hard notes of everything. So any conversation, anything that's happening, I'm writing things down all the time. Like the phone's cool, but if your phone dies, or if if you can't download your stuff, it's like, where's it go? But a notebook, and I have them all saved. A notebook, you're good. So I'm still like old school in that thinking. Like, let me just write it down real quick. Hold on.
Sure. Well, I think there's different ways of doing it for each person and doing it right for themselves. Like the fact that you write stuff down, your notes, your call notes, I'm sure, client notes, meeting notes, shit that you need to do after work, and the honey to-do list notes and all that stuff. If that works for you, then awesome. I think for most people, they need to figure out the thing that works for them. Like there are people that listen to this show, just like they listen to other shows, and they go, oh, well, that thing worked for that guy. Or the host said this thing, and well, I'll try that. And that's part of the reason why this is here. Like, yeah, try different things. Give it a shot. But find the thing that works for you. And I think we got to be honest with ourselves, too. Like, I know my handwriting is atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. Because typically, I don't give a fuck. I'm just trying to get it out and move along.
Right.
And it's easier for me to be able to speak things into dictation or to type them out, because then I can kind of organize them. And I think back to like grade school where they're like, here's how you build an outline. And I still kind of work through my notes that way. Call notes, client notes, internal meetings, all of the shit. Same deal. But I don't write any of this stuff down. But then when I do mind dumps, I make sure that I write that stuff down. Because then it's like a literal flow from brain to hand and just pouring out. But then I think I've got some OCD where I go, well, I got this eraser here. I need to have these things in somewhat order. So I'll need to like route them around. And there have been times where I'm like scribbling all these lines all over. And I'm like, that looks like chaos. And that makes it even worse. I'm like, oh, geez, and starting over.
Right.
But finding the thing that works for you is critical. And figuring out why it works for you, I believe, is even more critical. So what do you think it is about the writing of the notes that is critical for you?
All right. So you know that I've been doing this whole new venture, right? Part of that is two things. My wife is a teacher, so I got that on my side because she reviews all my stuff before it goes, or else I would look like probably both of our notebooks. And people are like, I don't understand what he's trying to say here. Yeah. I don't know what any of this means. Like, why did I even do this? So I have that on my side. The other piece of it too is like, you have to realize that there's different learning styles. And that's something like, so when I first started and, the first company I was at, and they were like, hey, can you go train the people on how you sell? I was like, all right, cool. So I went over and I'm like, okay, so when a customer says this and I do this, and everyone's like, so you get like two different reactions from the room. You get people who are like, oh, yeah. Yep, okay, cool. And then you get other people like, that is like, what is that? I don't even know what you're doing. Like, it's not a process. And you're like, no, it's a process. Like, and to you, it makes sense because you do it every day.
Yeah.
But as someone brand new, they're like, this dude needs meds really bad. So then I start learning like how people learn. So I find that I'm a visual person, where there's people who, like for me, if I want to learn something, I'm picking up a book. I learn better from a book than watching a video. Other people, so it's like for me, it's always going to be written. So I'll write it, or if I'm reading a book, I have kind of like a photographic memory a little bit, and I can start like reciting. But then not everyone learns the same way. But it's like you don't know how you're going to learn until you really start deep diving what you process and how you process it.
I think school could have done a such better job for us to be able to set us up for that stuff. And not to like place blame, but if we think of the Prussian system of schooling, where they teach you how to just do shit, basically teaching you how to just be on a factory line instead of teaching you how to learn and look for fallacies and bullshit in the world and go, that smells like horse shit, probably tastes like horse shit. At that point, you know what? I think we got some horse shit. But for the most part, people don't get it.
Think about what the American dream was, right? So everyone knew it the same way because we all got taught it the same way. So go to school, go to high school, graduate, you find the love of your life, you get married, live happily ever after, blah, 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 right? But it's really like that was what they said should happen. The times change. even if you're in a business or you have a podcast, like you're going to realize what you need to do to adapt to your changing environment. So what worked when they started teaching that, they're like, okay, this is the way. And then like 50 years later, you're like, no, that's not the way. Like my wife can't be home right now. Like we need both incomes or else like we're going to find a cardboard box on the street and call it our house. So it's like times are completely different from how they started because you didn't learn how to really balance a checkbook. Super important. Finances are great. But after you graduate high school, what's the first piece of mail you get?
Well, here's a free credit card.
Credit card offer.
It's free money. And you're like, oh my God, free money. What are we going to buy?
You know how many people go in debt from their first $500 credit card? How much do you owe? I don't know, like $3,000. It was $500.
Yeah.
What the hell did you do? I didn't realize I had to pay it back. No one told me.
It's like the CDs from when we were a kid. You remember the penny CDs? Like get 10 CDs for like 5 cents or something, and then they hit you with some crazy bill. I don't know anybody that's ever paid that. Is that company even still around?
I don't know, but if that is, I'm gonna start a business. That's my next business idea. Hey Nick, got some CDs for you, bud. Due to inflation, it's now 5 cents.
I wonder if CDs are coming back. I go out to thrift stores every once in a while. Now, total nerd alert, but I'm into sports memorabilia and sports cards and stuff like that. And I sell some of that stuff on eBay. So I'll go to different Goodwills and Salvation Armies and all, and I'll look for like any sort of memorabilia or anything that they've got. And then, typically I'll blow $20 on whatever dumb thing I found that I'm like, oh, here's this little gizmo that can go into my closet in the kitchen, basically. There are certain times where I come across things where I'm like, man, it's interesting to kind of just nerd out on some stuff, but you've got to be able to be real with it and understand, just like you have to understand the things that align with you, So back to how to do the checkbook, how to even do your taxes or anything like that. Like we get out of school and it's like, I don't know. Oh, they're giving me money. Oh shit. Well, here's a credit card. What do I want? I don't know. You want to go to the mall? You want to get some dumb shit? And we'll buy some random things and not pay them back. And it's like, oh, I need to do this. Yeah. But I have seen recently, at least here in Florida, they're starting to mandate that there are classes that are financial classes for high school students.
Oh, huge.
Yeah. But some fucking adult who's basically like our age, maybe a little older, was like, hold up, I didn't learn shit in school, and I fucked up all my finances. We should do something about this. Yeah. And then Karen, the one who's been there for so long, is like, Jenny, shut up. Like, calm down, Karen. We need to fix these children.
Settle down. This is our future.
For the children, Karen. And she's like, fuck the children.
Yeah. They're going to ruin the world. They are if we keep heading this way.
Yeah, exactly. Man, we can just keep running with the thing. I feel bad for Karen. She's getting her ass kicked in this visual. Yeah. So, poor girl. Meanwhile, back to the learning. When you think about getting out of school and you got that credit card or anything else that happened from there, you had to learn that shit on your own. So if you were to take a little bit of a step back, and let's say somebody came up to you and was like, hey man, I'm about to graduate high school. What's something I should be aware of, either financially or business wise? What kind of advice would you give them?
So I don't know if I told you this before. So we adopted a 16-year-old at one point. So this was, I don't know, 7 years ago. So she's like college and all that kind of stuff right now. But when it makes you realize, like, you can see it unfolding. So my experience out of high school, I was like, I'm the dude I'm talking about right now. I was like, how do I owe $3,000? Like, I didn't know I had to pay because no one tells you that shit. So I'm talking about myself when I say that. But it's like, I found myself, you always hear stories like, oh man, I'm sounding like my parents right now. My parents didn't tell me that shit either. So I was sounding like it was just me talking there was times, and it's like you don't know until you are watching someone like literally work to ruin their life. And I'd be like, okay, this is actually kind of a funny story. I don't know if I should say it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I had just gotten You like how I phrase that?
Set that
I don't know if I should, but I'm gonna. So I had just had double hernia surgery. So at home, I'm all meted up, like bad. So my daughter is like, she's home. She's like, hey, do you need anything? And I was like, I just got the mail, and I was like, hey, what's this envelope? It says your name versus the state of Pennsylvania. So she went to college like fucking 4 hours away. Opened it up. She's like, oh, all right. So I got pulled over. I was like, like, I got pulled over, and it was like for speeding or something. And well, did you like do guilty, not guilty? No, I just didn't pay it. And I was like, you didn't pay it? And she's like, well, no. I was like, how are you going to get back to school? They're going to take your license. Like this, it literally said your license is going to be suspended on this day. And I was like, so I'm on some crazy meds for the pain. And I was like, bro, that's my term. I realize when I do that, that's like my term of endearment.
Sure. I'm about to level with you.
So I'm like, bro, get my checkbook. Like, I was like, if you don't have your license, it's gonna be harder for you to get a job. You're gonna have to take the bus. Like, and I start doing this whole trickle down effect. Then later come and find out he's also falling into the credit card thing. And I was like, bro, like, okay, how can I put this? This card controls your future. If you're late, everything else that you want to do revolves around how they score you on this card. And she like ran a bill. Oh my God. It was like, you wonder why I don't have hair. Like, that's legit why I don't have hair. But like, it's those things. So like, I would literally be like, okay, 2 things of importance. Credit card, it should be used properly, right? So technically what you should do is you use it to make your purchases, pay it off the next month. If you can't pay it off, don't use it, because all you're going to do is have a reoccurring fee, and that's how they make their money. But then if you're using it, you're going to show a payment history, and that's what everything. You want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, you want to apply for a loan. They're going to base everything you do from this point forward on what you do with this. Also on how much they give you later on. Second piece is always goes back to you're going to go as far as you allow yourself to go, because it not always comes from internal, but sometimes it's external sources too, like limiting beliefs, like, oh, you can't do that, oh, you can't do that. It's like, but you still hang around those people that are telling you can't do it. And it's like, no, you do whatever you put your mind to. You either do it all the way or don't do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like those 2 things I think is what I could have used, because I technically didn't have my life together until 30. So you think about and I didn't go to college. So you think about like the transition, like that's a lot of years to waste. So if I had that talk back then, I might be further, today, right? It's like, I'm not going to dwell on it, but it's like something to think about.
Sure.
Because I was in debt. My credit score was like my street address at one point. It was like 415.
Oh man, that's funny. And we both worked in the car industry for a minute. So we know what that looks like, where somebody's like, well, I got a 560 score, but I want to get a Mercedes. Like, oh, cool. So we see you still actually owe your mother from when you were a toddler of things, and you've never paid anybody back. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. How do you want to do this? Oh, you want to spend like $850, $900 a month for this E-Class? From
nothing down, huh? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and you have nobody to co for you. Yeah, makes sense. They probably got shitty credit too. Come on in.
I walked over to a customer one time in the I always call it like my wolf days, when everyone was like, dude, you could sell anyone on anything. And I was like, okay, well, sure. I walked over to the customer was like, I'm like, how's your credit? He's like, it could use some help. And I was like, that's a good sign. So I like go over, pull his credit, and I was like, he goes, yeah, so can I get that car? I was like, you can't finance the chair you're sitting in.
You could use some help.
They're like, no.
Oh, it's too good. We're going to need you to get out of that chair.
I wasn't the nicest person back in those car sales days, because I just got really cocky and I was like, I can sell anything.
Man, that's a good point. Confidence is a big thing, you know, especially in sales. If you're confident, you walk into a room or you walk into a meeting and you know, these are the things we're going to talk about, and I'm confident in that. But there's a difference between being confident and cocky.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you have to go through that shit. Maybe not everybody. Some people can be told, like, hey, here's a lesson, learn it. And they go, okay, cool, got it. Other people are told a lesson. They're like, that's a fun story. Fuck you. I'm going to go figure my shit out. And then they're like, hey, you want to buy this thing? Eat shit. Well, fuck, that didn't work. Well, what do I do now? Well, not that, you know. But you have to go through some of that stuff. I had a job years and years and years ago. I was on the phones, and it was maybe like my first month, something like that. And there was like this dumb fee that people would get charged if they didn't do a thing or whatever. And I remember talking to this guy. He was just fucking pissed that he got charged this. And he was like, this is stupid. You need to turn it around. And it was a marketing piece. And I was like, no, we can't. Like, we're not going to. And two, let's talk about it. Let's figure this thing out. And I started to kind of talk through it a bit, but I was rough. And I was kind of just not having any of this guy's shit. So at one point I was like, look, man, you got two options. One is you can just hang up on me right now. Or the second is you can just accept this as a learning lesson and we can both move on. And he was like, you could almost hear him just getting so angry. But I remember having the conversation with my boss at that point that had hired me a couple weeks before that. And he was like, what was this? What happened? Yeah. And I walked him through the scenario. And there was like a moment where he was like, I kind of understand that. That was just a rough choice of words. And I was like, hey, did he pay? And I think he ended up paying and he stayed. And I was like, well, then it worked. Yeah. And he was like, well, what the fuck? And they gave me a look like, who the fuck is this guy? What's your deal? And then I kind of had that status where they're like, this dude can do it, but he's a douchebag, and had to work my way back from that. Where I think when you go through that stuff and you have those things that happen, like, you should be able to learn from it. But full transparency, like 7 years before that, I had my own consultant company as a young 20-something, making loads of money, walking into dealerships and telling people, this is how you should do your fucking job. And they're like, oh, I've done it for 30 years. I'm like, you did the same thing 30 times for a year in a row, just over and over and over. And then my head got so big. And then when that whole thing crumbled and I'm lying on my mom's couch, I'm thinking, fuck me. Whew, what happens now? You should learn some shit. So on that note, are there any major episodes or things that have happened in life where you can look back and you go, man, that was one of those moments that changed me?
And the biggest effect on my life was legit being small. Like, because it's already hard when you're the only male and the youngest. So you get like, you literally get treated completely different, right? I'm like, you know, yay high. I couldn't ride any rides and like I could even drink.
Until he was 25.
Yeah. But I was always short. So there was always all these like limiting things. And so like when I was growing up, I was like, I want to get bigger. You know, I can't force myself to get taller. But I'm like, man, if I could, you know, because nothing is threatening about you. Not that I want it to be threatening, but it's like you can. And I was a smart ass. Like, I never stopped being a smart ass, and it started young. So, but there was nothing threatening about me. So, I was in a really weird situation because I would talk the shit, and they were like, "What'd you say?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Friends, come, friends, help.
Yeah. Say it to my face. They're like, "Hold on." I said,
let me get on the ground.
Right. So it's like, I was, you know, I had kind of like that whole upbringing, right? So it was like, everyone assumed that I was fragile. I wasn't. You get this whole like almost stereotype. Oh, you have older sisters? Oh, you don't know what it's like. And you're like,
So give some context here. Who was the family unit that you had? Because I know some of this stuff because you and I grew up since like, I don't know, what, third grade or whatever. So I know some of those people from years ago, but give us some context. Lay the groundwork here.
so I literally had, my mom and then my three sisters. My dad I saw, here and there, which I'm learning more and more about. That's the crazy part too. Like I can get into that. That's a whole different story. But so my dad really wasn't around. So I literally went home. It was my mom and my three sisters. They were all older than me. So it was like I was like nothing could hurt me at that point because I was the dude that was getting dressed in girls' clothes. I didn't have any male support, So like I was like, fuck man, I'm getting set up to fail. And I was like, all I want to do is be bigger. Like I remember growing up too, like, they were always worried about me. So I was actually supposed to be a twin. Other twin died during childbirth. So I said, obviously I'm strong, survival of the fittest. They were like, oh, he's not going to be a big kid. Like it's going to be impossible for him to be big. And I hate hearing the word like impossible, or like you can't do something. Like to me, that's worse than like telling me to go fuck myself. Like you'd be like, hey, fuck off. I'm like, all right. Great day. But if you're like, you can't do that, I'm like, says who? So it's like, that's always bugged me to like the core. So I was always small and always told, you'll never be this. And I was like, fuck off. I will be that. So like I started young and that kind of molded me to always just keep going. Like whatever everyone else is saying, like set your mind. Years later, I met my wife. I was 145 pounds, 5'9", 145 pounds. And I wasn't healthy by any means because I was a part of that 2008 crash. So I had my throw money days, or as I refer to them as my like New York strip days, and then I had my ramen noodle days.
Yeah,
that's all I could afford. And so when the market tanked, I literally drank for a year, legit a year straight, 12 to 12. It was like I was fucking clocking in for work. Cool. And so when I met my wife, I was surviving off of like Mountain Dew, beer, and like fucking Ben and Jerry's. Best diet ever. If you ever want to lose weight, best diet ever. Beer, Mountain Dew, and Ben and Jerry's. Don't take that advice. And it was like that was like my lowest point. Because literally when I met her, I was spiral. My spiral was like coming to an end. I was spending like, because I wasn't working. I was like, oh, I don't have a job. I can't do this. I can't do that. Like my life is fucking over at this point. So I'm like, I'm just gonna jerk myself away, right? No one cares, because when you have money, you don't realize who's the real friends and who are the fake friends. So I thought all my real friends were there, but they weren't, because they all were gone. So it was literally me in a bar being like, okay, let me take another beer. When I met her, I was 145, and we got married 2 years later. So 2 years later, and it was like she kind of helped me get back to the mindset that I was. Because one, I say that she has vision problems, because if you saw her, you're like, how the fuck pulled that off? I'm like, best salesman ever.
I asked you that.
I told you I could sell anything. I just fucking proved it. But she kind of just helped me get back to like that part of my life. Because before I hit that spiral or that downward trend, I was good. I was healthy. I was, doing things correctly, or what I was considered correct. And then I needed that complete rock bottom hit for me to look back and go, holy shit, like I just got off track. Like I let one thing just take me off track completely. Fast forward, we are gonna this July. I think we're. Oh, I can't say that. This July, we're celebrating 10 years of marriage. We've been together 12 years in this February. This past February. I'm like 216. Like, but people are always like, and I look back and I'm like, oh, all those people that said it wasn't possible. Like, and I'm not doing it to like, for me, it was just me being like, okay, they said it wasn't possible. I'm not going to do it to prove them wrong. I got to prove it to myself. Like, how much effort does it actually take? And to be a healthy 216, which I am right now, it's a lot. Like, but you start focusing. And it's almost like you have to have like, you have to be obsessed with your focus. So like bodybuilding, I'm going to compete this year. I'm at the gym every morning by 6:30. So 6:30, I'm at the gym. Most people aren't even awake. I'm up at 4:30. I'm reading. I'm self-reflecting. I'm thinking about my day. Everyone's like, man, why do you go to the gym so early? I'm like, when you start your day with the absolute hardest thing possible, it only gets easier. Like, I'm lifting a lot of weight. When I leave the gym, I'm like, what else could happen? Nothing. I'm gonna have a bad call today. Oh well, that's not 400 pounds. I'm cool. You know, I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah. It couldn't kill me.
That changed. Yeah, right. Like if the weight falls, I'm dead. A call.
Yeah.
Someone wants to yell at me?
Next.
Keep going. What do you got? Let it all out. But it was like that downward spiral. Like, so when I was young, I was always told I couldn't do things. And that came from the hierarchy or the matriarch. Like, oh, it's not possible. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, that's not meant for you. Not meant for me. And I was like, okay, well, what is meant for me? And that's when I started to change my mind. So when I was in the stock, like doing, I had my 6, my 26, my 63, like I was full-fledged into that. And that's when I was like making a lot of money. And I was like, man, all those people that said you had to go to college for this shit, like, that's fucking crazy. Like, oh, you want a good job? You gotta go to college. I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Why at 18 do I have to select the rest of my life from one thing? I was like, fuck that noise. So it kind of started from there. But I feel like I needed that. That was like the humbling experience. So like when you start getting really cocky and you're like, I could close everybody. Give me a woman in a white dress, I'm gonna sell her ketchup all day long, right? I'm gonna go to Alaska and sell fucking ice cubes. You know why? Because I'm Pat fucking Maguire. Right? You start getting this ego, but you literally need like that fucking slap in the face when you're like, oh, my world just got rocked. And then it's like, but then if you can learn from that, like I feel like that is like, you need it to happen almost to have that like, okay, now I really see what it is. Like now the vision is clear. Before you were like, money, because before that happened, I was all about money. Everything. I was wearing expensive shit. I wear the same shit all day long now. And I'm totally cool with it. Like, but I had to have like, I was like, name brands. Okay, let me go to, I'm going to wear these shades. Do I need them? No, but I could buy them. And that was the important thing to me when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, if I didn't have that slap or that, like, let's take you down a few notches thing,
yeah, I
don't think where I would be where I am today. Because now my core focus is like, how can I help you? So sales, all my sales changed, like forever. So I went from being super cocky about how I sold to now, okay, how can I actually help you? I'm building the entire value around them. I'm different from anyone else they're going to talk to because I'm going to provide them the most value possible. So I feel like that last thing was, and I still, I mean, I'll be 38 this year. I don't even know how old I am. That's how old I am. I need Geritol. But I've had little instances throughout my life, and I think about this constantly. So I'm big into bodybuilding, and I lift every day, and I can outlift a lot of people for being 5'9". So I go to the gym, everyone's like, "Oh, dude, there's that big dude." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Where?" They're like, "You." I'm like, "Oh, okay, hey." But I had double hernia surgery because I went to the front squat over 300 pounds. I had shingles at 30. So I've always had these little like, hey, reminders like, let me shake you and make you realize you're fucking human. Like, you are not a superhero. But it's like, I feel like two things happen when people get knocked down. They either stay down, they go, well, this is what it is. Or they're like, okay, cool, great lesson, keep going. So it's like, I've always been like, okay, no, everything that happens to me in life is a lesson. Either I learn from it, or I'm going to let it keep me there forever. Mm-hmm. And then what's my future going to be? No one knows.
I would like to think that there's an innate ability for us all to look at lessons and take those lessons and use them. I, however, do not believe that to be true. I think for the most part, we are fed what we're fed, and we produce what we've been given to eat, you know? So the people that were telling you, you can't do this, that's not for you. You love those people, and even if you don't, but they're the people that are around you and they're taking care of you, then you listen to them and you absorb that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Just like the kids that are raised in houses where their parents were super growth oriented and growth mindset. You know, there's balance, all that sort of stuff too. You know, you can't go completely crazy with your kids and like unpack fucking every single thing where they're like, I just wanted to talk about a toy. Like, I don't know what your deal is.
I just wanted a sandwich, Mom.
Yeah. But I think no matter what, this touches back to balance, because if you have those crazy moments and those crazy highs, at some point you got to be able to come back, because life is about balance. It isn't about those crazy highs and all of that. I'm glad that you and I, both of us, kind of got that shit out of our systems relatively early. Some people realize that a bit later in life. They kind of struggle and then they work through, and in their late 30s or 40s, they'll have some sort of success. And then that ego kind of comes out. And they're like, it's about fucking time. Where it's like, you know, that's not what it's about. You know, like I've heard people say before, once I reach the top, I'm going to look back at those people, I'm going to laugh and be like, oh, you people said I couldn't do it. It's not about laughing at that point. It's about going, well, I got here. How did I get here? And honestly, out of anybody else that's around, can I help them? Can I help them also do this? But it's on them to be open to that. So was there any sort of point where you can kind of look back and go, you know, there was a shift, a mindset shift, be it in school or in your 20s at some point, where you were like, I remember that moment when it shifted, and then everything changed?
It was that portion of my life, like that, that I just kind of like touched on, because I was on top of the world. I was with a girl, there was a kid involved, wasn't my kid, super attached, like was ready to go to court, the whole thing. So literally when the rug got pulled out from under me, and that was like the point that I always go back to in my head. I'm like, I can never go back to that point. And that's why I make it now every morning. I make it a point. Like, I don't ever set my alarm, because it's like, I know I have to get up before everyone else is even awake. Before everyone else is thinking about waking up, I'm already like an hour or 2 hours into my day. And it's become such a routine for me. It's like, okay, because when you think about it, right? Like when you go out throughout your day, it's a lot of outside coming in. Right? So if you are waking up with everybody else, you're like, okay, let me check my messages. Oh, I have emails. Oh, I have this. I have that. And your day starts. So when do you make time for yourself? Especially if you're single, because then it's like, okay, when you're single, it's like, okay, all right, so let me wake up. I have my job to go to. If I own a business, I have to do this. I have to do that. Then when I get back, I'm going to cook, or I'm going to go out with friends or whatever. It's like, there's all this stuff, and you're like, when do I get to work on myself? And that's when I started waking up early. Like, I need to make sure that I spend time with my wife. right? Like I could work. I'm a hard worker, so I could keep going. Like it's not above me to. I'm like, oh, 8 o'clock, cool. Let me just send an email, right? Like I'll keep going, but it's like, nope. Okay, morning is for me. Nighttime is with her. So I had to like literally set those things in place. And it's like if you don't put the time in to even like for the self-mastery piece, no one's gonna step in and be like, hey, it's your time. Like this is your time to chill. Like get outside of your head. Just start, it's like you have to make a conscious effort to be like, okay, I have to fix myself. But if you have all this shit coming in from the outside in, when are you gonna have the time to fix yourself? So I started waking up early, and now it's just a force of habit. Weekends, doesn't matter. I wake up, I'm like, okay, I still have 3 or 4 hours before she gets up. So what am I gonna do? Read a book. Let me work on something else. Let me do this. Let me focus on me, and that way after that, I'm cool. I can give whoever wants a piece of my time. There you go. You're good. Because I already feel like I got the most out of it. So it's like, but you have to find any amount of time is better than no time at all.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Right. So it's just like people always ask me about fitness, right? Because now since I'm big, everyone's like, oh, how do you get to that? I'm like, oh, a lot of work, man. Like, gotta do some crazy shit sometimes. But like when you want to do something, it's the action, not really the amount of action, it's the action versus no action at all. So people are like, okay, I want to lose weight. What do you have to do? Like if I want this to happen quick, I'm like, okay, well you have to do some cardio, some lifting, you have to do this, you have to do that. Like, I don't have time for that. I'm like, the fuck don't you have time for that? Like do something. Don't not do anything. 10 minutes is better than 0 minutes. If all you have is 5 minutes, focus for 5 minutes on yourself. And I can bet you your mind will switch and it'll be the most like productive 5 minutes of your life. That's all you're going to give yourself. But everyone has fucking time. Turn off your notifications for Facebook, Instagram, everything.
Ugh.
Like, and it's like we get swamped in, but it's like, give yourself time and then make it a challenge. 5 minutes a day for 1 week. Now, can you do 10 minutes the next week? Can you do, 30 minutes? But if you never put the time in, you're never going to get the results. And that goes for anything. You want a promotion? What are you going to do to get it? You want to lose a bunch of weight for the beach? Okay. You're going to find time. People will drive. This always drove me nuts too. People will drive out of their way, like veer off the road, cut in front of you to get to a Starbucks. But they won't take 5 fucking minutes. Be like, okay, let me focus on myself for 5 minutes. Like, let me spend $20 on a venti cappuccino, start double shot of caramel. Like, I want it all. And you're like, first off, that's fucking stupid. It's coffee, which is like the cheapest thing you could buy. Secondly, you could have used that time to just sit in the parking lot.
So let's think about those people that are actually doing that and making those decisions. I know that we all kind of fall into this where there's something you don't want to do and you look for a happy. Like, I just want a happy. I want a little dopamine to hit. I want something like, hey, let me go do this thing. Or maybe I can just step aside and do something like this for a minute. Or I can watch some TV or whatever. People look for those things because it's the fear of the unknown at times where they're like, well, I don't really know what that's all going to take. And then when they start to think through it and they think through all that stuff, like, man, I got to be at the gym for hours. I got to do things. I don't know what all that stuff looks like. And then it becomes this big, giant, hairy, scary monster where you're like, I don't know how to deal with this. And it's just a matter of fucking starting. I literally had a conversation earlier today with a friend of mine who was like, hey, I'm kind of in a tough spot. I've got a great career. I make loads of money, but I'm not really fulfilled. And I'm looking to switch careers and do something that's brand new that I've never done before, and I have to start from scratch. And I'm thinking I just want to burn all the bridges and go do that. And on one hand, I was like, I appreciate your heart with that. Put the fucking gasoline away. We're not going to burn all the bridges. We don't need to do this. And then I was like, let's talk through and figure this stuff out. We hit on a couple things. You know, he's got money in the bank, so it could be easier for him to step away and do something where some people, not everybody's got money in the bank to be able to do stuff. And I get that. But we can't look at those sort of things and be like, oh, well, worst case, I got this. There's a balance even to that, because it's a matter of thinking through, but still taking those small actions. So as we were talking through it, I was like, all right, well, what's the thing that you think you need to do? And he's like, oh my God, I want to blah, 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 blah. And he starts running through all this stuff that's like big shit, almost big, hairy, scary monster stuff. I was like, okay, that's cool, but how would you start that? And he's like, oh, I would probably just Google search and find this thing and that. I was like, beautiful, man. So what are you going to do tonight? Like, well, I guess I'm going to fucking Google search and find this and start to look through that stuff. I'm like, great. So at that point, what do you think could happen? He's like, oh, well, that would probably lead me to this and lead me to that. And then I don't really know. Like, that's the beautiful part. Because if you start taking those steps, you don't know exactly what's going to come up. And I personally believe that's where the magic of the world pops into play. Because when you start to show up and start to do things, opportunities and doorways just open up for you. Sometimes it's a little much because one door will open. You go, all right, cool, I'm in. There are 40 other doors here. Shit, which one do I go through? Right. And some of that is still just taking the next step, even getting close to the door and being like, does it smell like fire? Does it smell like death? Does it smell great or whatever? And being able to kind of work through that stuff. But I'm there with you. I think if we take those steps, just those smaller steps, even like, what can you do today? And I go through this shit on the daily. I think I've made myself so hyper aware that there are times where I can instantly kick into awareness and then jump from either side. Like, you should have done or you should do. And I'm like, I'm right here, right now. So what is the fucking thing I can do next? What do I need to do now? And then being able to take those little steps. Sometimes it's all it takes. It's just that little bit that'll open those doors for you, you know? And you've experienced that stuff before.
Yep. One of my favorite sayings is, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. And elephants are massive, right? So your whole entire thing could be huge, but you're not going to swallow that shit whole. A snake can't even do that.
Yeah.
They can dislocate their jaw. But it's like, dude, just piece by piece.
Yeah.
If you know what the end game is, reverse engineer it.
So let's touch on that too. I think some of that, like where we talk about goals at different times, or people are like, you need to know exactly what your goal is. I at times have issues with that because I've thought of different goals. Now, I'm not trying to bring religion or faith or whatever into this, but I sort of am. I believe in God. I'm Christian. So there are times where I go, all right, God, well, what do you want me to do? And it's not like I hear, Nicholas, I need you to move along this way, you know? But I'm like, all right, cool.
But if you did.
If I did, I would move that direction. Like, that's the only way I'm going. Yes, sir. But being able to kind of hear those nods and understand that you're just at least moving in some sort of direction, I think we then internally need to figure out what is it that's guiding us? Like you talked about money before, where the money was the guide for you. And you were like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that and do this and do that. And then you do all those things and you realize that was just a bandage. Like that's not what it's about at all. You know, so with the business that you're starting now, this is obviously different than what you had done in the past. And you're not going into it with that gimme, I need money sort of scenario. So what is the approach that you're taking, like, with your mindset as you start to build this thing?
For this time, when I look at it, right? So I'm literally doing the little bit of an elephant at a time, because I'm still doing a 9 to 5, and it's funny too, because like everyone's like you know what's funny? So everyone goes, have you ever trained anyone before? And I was like, oh my God, dude, yeah. I just never, like, I was doing it while I was at companies. I was doing it, on the side. Like if I was unemployed, I was like, hey, let me stop into this dealership and tell you guys that you guys suck. I'm going to show you how to actually sell a car. I'm going to tell you how to rip someone out of service and sell them a car. Like, so there was different times where I was doing it, but I was like, you know what? This is a year that I'm going to make it legit. So I'm going to get the LLC. I didn't know anything about an LLC. So I'm like, I need an LLC. I'm like, okay, fill out all this information. I'm like, all right, cool. There's this thing called Google. Need an answer?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, cool. Right. So it's like, but it's literally been piece by piece, and I'm still learning, because now it's not me in person.
Mm-hmm.
It's me here. You paid for videos, right? You're going to learn everything that I know in videos, in video form. You're going to get slides. You're going to get this. You're going to get that. You're going to like all this stuff. You're going to literally have all my years of sales given to you rather than the trial, the error, like all this kind of stuff. So for me, it's like the mindset piece is like, okay, where before when I was younger, I'd be like, okay, like I've put my heart into it, right? Because we always get to that point and you're like, I've dumped my heart into this and it's not working. This isn't for me. Like I find myself now where I'm like, okay, that didn't work. Okay, so what I was trying to do didn't work. This I still need to see all the way through. Okay, let me step back to the drawing board. I've revamped, and I launched January 1st because I told myself I had to. Like if I'm going to do this, I'm going to get the LLC by January 1st. So I did that. That was step one. And I was like, oh, have you made any sales? I'm like, I'm not really concerned because the right people are going to come. Like, I'm not going to go out there and be like, I could hard sell you. I could hard sell the shit out of you. But it loses its purpose at that point. Like, I've done that before. Like, I know how to force a sale. I don't want to do that. I'm going to get you on the phone. I'm going to make you say yes. Right? But it's like, I constantly find myself stepping back and going, okay, let me look from the outside in. Here's where I'm at currently. Here's the next step, or what I think the next step is. Now, if I don't know what the next step is, who knows what the next step is? Who can I talk to that's already experienced this, that started this, I think the thing to realize too is like, people are very open
Big time.
to talking, so if I don't know something and I openly admit it now, before you couldn't tell me otherwise. You don't have to do something. Cool. Now I'm like, oh shit, I don't know. Who the fuck knows? And I'm like, oh, hey, all right, I got some questions for you. Please help me. But like people are very open. And it's like you don't realize because people are so afraid to talk now. Or you always think like, especially like, so this is like, I do coaching, right? The coaching business has so many people that are in sales. Like they are sales coaches. Mm-hmm. And everyone thinks it's like, you got to talk shit about them. You got to do this. You're like, I don't want to be in that world. I don't want to be in that space. Like, who's better than you? Oh, fuck, this guy. He's been around a lot longer than me. Like, there's different levels. It's like, but you don't want to sell everyone. And that's the difference, too, is like, I'm not trying to sell everybody and their mother. Yeah. Whereas before I was. Like, bring your family and I'll sell them, too. Yeah. But it's like, my mindset now is just like, piece by piece. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing for me, the biggest hurdle for me was taking something that I was doing off the books and making it a legit business. The first hurdle's done. Next hurdle is, the first official sale, right? Cool. Does it have to happen tomorrow? No. Will it happen? Sure it will. When the time is right. And it's like realizing no one's going to be a millionaire overnight. I'll make $1. I'm like, that was the best dollar I made because it was all for me. Right? And it's like, I don't care. So this is more of like a ride for me. And it's like, it's keeping myself positive about the whole thing. Whereas before, I would always do what everyone is notorious for doing and self-doubt, negative talk. Like you start talking yourself out of seeing something through, or you get one failure and you're like, oh, fuck, not gonna work. Now I'm just like, well, okay, I learned how not to do it. Let me change that. You know? So yeah, it's just day by day, just like with anything. Like the point is to just keep moving. And that's what I realized. Like, that's what my entire life was, I guess, trying to teach me up until this point, was no matter what's thrown at you, no matter what happens, what speed bumps, what potholes, because, Pennsylvania is notorious for potholes, what potholes are there, like, it doesn't matter. Just keep going forward. Distractions all around you, stay focused, and keep moving. And that's where me waking up so early, it allows me to step back and go, okay, you woke up, you're still not a millionaire. Okay. That's fine. Fuck it. Like, it is what it is, but I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to try different things. I'm still trying. Does this ad work? Does this marketing piece work? Does this do this? No? Okay, cool. All right, on to the next. How can I reword this? How can I make it, more enticing? How can I do this? But it's like, just keep going. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what happens. Just keep going forward. And that's kind of like where I'm at now. So it's like, cool, it's up. I have a website. I got this, I have that. Everything's running. And when it's the right time, it's the right time. Until that point, I'm going to keep working on it, building it, building it, building it.
It's a beautiful way to be able to get into it. I mean, really, I like to end these episodes with finding one piece of advice that you can give. Then you seamlessly walked into that. So thank you, because that's a beautiful piece of advice where a lot of people can think that they just need to do all of these things, but in all actuality, you just need to do the next thing, whatever that next thing is. Just do those things. So Pat, man, I really appreciate you being on. You and I could talk for hours and hours and hours. But these episodes are typically about an hour long, so we're about at our time. We'll definitely have you back, especially as your business grows and as you learn more. I'm sure our listeners will love to hear some of that. Where can people find you?
So the business is, you actually go on Instagram, which is at tie cutters, just like a tie you wear, and cutting it, so tie cutters. Website is tie cutters, and it all relates back to those really hardcore sales where you got initiated because they cut your tie.
That's good stuff, man.
Super simple.
Yeah, I dig it. Well, cool. Pat, thanks again for joining the show. We appreciate you being on.
Another great conversation on today's episode of the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. Being told we can't do something is probably something you're used to as well. Pat's story is in some ways a hero's journey through the ego and headed on a path toward self-mastery. But what did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the topics we got into today. And if you enjoyed the episode, please jump over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and leave a 5-star review. And if you really enjoyed the show, then please go ahead and share it with your friends, family, whoever you want. We covered some really tough subjects and got some great tips that I think will help us all. And check out the show notes for more info from Pat, contact info for him, and check out other episodes on the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show.com, as well as our YouTube channel, The Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. Just type it in, you'll see us. And thanks again, Pat, for being raw, real, and honest with us. Thank you to you for hanging out with us. And with that, remember, your mindset matters, and so do you.